There's no question that Seneca's life was stressful. Plagues, natural catastrophes, financial crises, frustrating colleagues, personal insecurities, existential angst, deranged leaders and bosses, and a lifelong chronic health condition to boot. His life was littered with stresses and anxieties. But the truth is that if it wasn't, if everything had been easy, we probably wouldn't be talking about him 2,000 years later. So how did he manage? How did he deal with his stress? What can he teach us about managing our own? It's good that in addition to all his experiences that Seneca was such a great writer, because his letters, his essays, his plays, indeed all of his writings were preoccupied with these problems and teach us so much about how we can conquer our own modern stresses and anxieties. Never will there be a shortage of reasons for anxiety, Seneca wrote. Whether born of happiness or misery, life will press on its way from one pursuit to another. But he reminds his friend Lucilius that we can hold out free from anxiety during life's siege. We all can. We can avoid getting swept up in all the chaos and all the responsibilities and all the overwhelming goals and aspirations of life. We can overcome adversity, achieve peace of mind, and reign over the greatest empire, as Seneca said, which he believed was becoming emperor of oneself, of one's emotions. Okay, but how? First, he would say we must come to the realization that there are more things likely to frighten us than there are to crush us. We suffer more in imagination than in reality, he said. We spend so much time worried about how bad things are going to be. We torture ourselves more than the thing we're worried about ever could. That is, if it happens at all. So what I advise you to do, he said, is do not be unhappy before the crisis comes. We are in the habit of exaggerating or imagining or anticipating sorrow. Instead of letting those racing thoughts and outsized fears swirl around in his head, he said, you should write down whatever enters in your head. You should get out all those thoughts on paper. You should cage your monkey mind in a journal. Seneca's evening review was essential to calming down. It was essential to self-improvement and personal growth. This is how to deal with one's ills, he said. This brings peace and freedom. To conquer his stress, Seneca also made it a routine to seek out manageable stress and challenges that could make him stronger. He took plunges in freezing water. He fasted or ate the cheapest and scantiest fare. He went out in public wearing his worst clothes. He slept on the floor. He made it a priority to practice what he called voluntary discomfort. Familiarity with exposure to danger will give contempt for danger, he explained. It is precisely in times of immunity from care that the soul should toughen itself beforehand for occasions of greater stress, and it is while fortune is kind that it should fortify itself against her violence. In days of peace, the soldier performs maneuvers, throws up earthworks when no enemy is in sight, and wearies himself by gratuitous toil in order that he may be equal to avoidable toil. This is what modern cognitive and behavioral therapists now call exposure therapies, getting close and personal with your anxieties. It's also about toughening yourself up, about practicing, about developing real confidence in your ability to persevere and survive and endure. Seneca stressed about all the things that we stress about. He was afraid of losing his job. He worried about not being able to provide for his family. He was anxious about whether his writing would be recognized or lost to obscurity. He was stressed about the future of his country. He knew that life was inherently unpredictable, and he was terrified of what he imagined life would be like if everything he worked for was suddenly snatched away by the spear thrusts of fortune. So he stopped imagining. He exposed himself. He got face to face with his fears, and then he asked himself the simple question, is this what I was so afraid of? Seneca, in other words, slayed his stress by bringing them closer, summoning them by walking right up to them again and again and again, and realizing that most things torment us when they ought not to torment us at all. Sometimes, admittedly, he couldn't cage those racing thoughts on the page. Sometimes there was no amount of exposure that cured him. Sometimes his problems felt especially vexing and painful. But he discovered to make even these seem less severe, all you have to do, he said, is draw further back and laugh. We get so consumed and distracted by the immediacy of what's happening around us that we forget to see the big picture. Zoom out, he says, and look at this from space, not with your ear to the ground. The troubles you're having at work will be ridiculous to you 3 jobs from now. Think about all the things you stressed about when you were younger and how silly they seem to you today. Now consider that this exact evolution will happen to you again at middle age and again in old age, if you are lucky to live that long. Draw back and laugh, he said. It's freeing. It's a relief. So yes, as Seneca said and believed, stress is a fact of life. But being stressed and feeling stressed, that is always a choice. It's a choice we make, or it's a choice we don't make. In fact, this is what all of the Stoics' teachings revolve around, the idea of combating and avoiding the unnecessary pain and stress and anxiety and worry and frustration, on focusing on what is in our choice and making the right choices. We see Marcus Aurelius filling the pages of his private journal with notes to himself on how to escape anxiety and not be controlled by his temper. We see Epictetus talking to his students over and over and over again about focusing on what was up to them and nothing else. The Stoic canon is loaded with practical and actionable steps to overcoming and domesticating feelings of anxiety and stress. It's up to us, though, to choose whether to put them to work. It's up to us to choose agency over our own emotions and feelings. It's up to us to take control. How much more enjoyable would your days be without the constant dread of stress looming over you? How much more productive would you be without spending hours per day indulging in imagined troubles? What could you be capable of if you trained for it, if you practiced, if you exposed yourself? You know the answer. And of course, if you are looking to slay your stress, you can check out the Daily Stoic Slay Your Stress Challenge. It's an actionable 14-day challenge designed to help you reclaim your life from the negative effects of stress and anxiety. We've designed this course to help you reclaim your life. We lay out the most actionable ways to manage your stress and anxiety, backed by thousands of years of research and practice, particularly the insights from someone as wise and impressive as Seneca. You can check it out at dailystoic.com/stress. Hey, thanks for watching Daily Stoic. If you want to learn more about Stoicism, you can check out some of our other videos here. Subscribe, we'd really appreciate it. Keep learning, keep studying, and remember those 4 Stoic virtues: courage, justice, temperance, and wisdom.